I'm just a girl standing here asking random people on the internet to listen to me about my writing advice. Hello everyone, so right now I'm going to do the Authortube Newbie tag, so let's get started. How did you find out about Authortube? So I actually found out about Authortube because of a friend of mine. We both had just found out, we'd known each other for years, but for some reason we never talked about the fact that we both wanted to write a book. And then the reason how it came up was we were just both talking about these projects that we wanted to work on, and I had just gotten into college. It was like our first year, and she told me about this new YouTuber she had been following called Jenna Maressi. She told me that she was giving a lot of really good writing advice, and that was about 5 years ago. So I'd say, so I guess through a friend of mine. Alright, next question. What genres do you write in? So I write in a variety of genres. I don't really like to tie myself down to a specific genre because I kind of just like to go wherever the story that I come up with takes me. My favorite by far is fantasy. I find I'm a very story-driven writer and reader, so I have written a mystery. It was like a Nancy Drew mystery, which is a lot of fun to write. I've written romance. I'm starting to get into like sci-fi and historical fiction as well. I usually come up with a story first and then I try to classify it by the genre, not the other way around. I've also written some poetry, some short stories, essays, plays, and I'm in the process of writing a video game through an online course that I'm taking. I can link to that down below as well, and a children's book. So I just kind of write the genre that the story tells me to, basically. Next question. What is your preferred writing tense, points of view, and category? My preferred tense is usually past tense because I just find that I just write like that. I basically write my stories as if I just watched them happening. So that's usually why I end up with past tense. And I know present tense is way more common when people use first person. I just have trouble being consistent with it, and so I'd rather just write it all in past tense and then fix all the tenses later than write in present tense and mess it up and then have to keep looking for that as I write. I think it's because I journal a lot. I like the idea of the protagonist like writing down things like as they happen, or after the fact, or like right after the fact, so they have time to kind of like reflect. I might end up changing this for one of my current projects, but until then, that's just how I roll. And I like to write in first person. The reason why is because as a reader, I like to be able to get inside the character's head, and if I don't use first person, then I'll usually use third person limited, because there are some stories where it's just better to use third person so you can kind of hop around what's happening. My go-to is using first person. Are you a plotter, a pantser, or a plantser? I consider myself a plantser. I've tried outlining and I've tried pantsing in the past, and I recommend all aspiring authors and writers try to do both because I learned a lot from trying both of these techniques. I can outline my books, but sometimes I just get to the point where I cannot look at the frickin' page anymore, and I cannot look at my outline, or I just get stuck and I feel like I'm just like kind of turning my wheels and I need to start writing. So that's why I consider myself a plantser, because I kind of like switch between the two. Eventually I want to do a video on the pros and cons of being a pantser and an outliner. Publishing method: traditionally published, indie published, self-published, or not published. I don't mean to brag, but like when I was in middle school, I entered a contest in like the 7th grade and got me published. Does that count? Because if not, no. I'm in the process of submitting some things to magazine. Obviously, I'm still in the revising process for some of my current projects, so I am not published just yet. However, I do have some credentials. I am literally going to school for literacy studies. I'm going to be certified like birth through middle school, how to write and how to read. So I do have some credentials. I do kind of know what I'm talking about. I want to be traditionally published. I actually worked briefly in the publishing industry. That was for nonfiction for a little bit. So I kind of have an idea of how it all works, and also like this isn't my day job. I have another job that I love, and I would rather have somebody who's more qualified than me to take care of something and work on it being published and whatnot. So that's my goal. Representation or publishing house. Obviously the dream would be to have my book go to a big 5 publisher so I can be traditionally published. I'm also just not tied down to being traditionally published or self-published. I'm still learning about both of them, so honestly, if I can get people who are not related to me or friends with me to read my book, then I will be very happy. Authortube plans. What Authortube related videos can we expect to find on your channel? I have a whole spreadsheet because I am very, very type A of ideas and the list research I've been doing on different videos and stuff I want to talk about. I want to do videos that discuss different ways how to manage your time when you are writing and you have a day job. To talk about how you can apply what you learn from reading books and watching movies and playing video games to your own writing. I think a lot of people get very focused on one method of telling a story. Like authors will only talk about novels and film writers will only talk about movies, and they kind of ignore the other methods of storytelling, specifically video games. And there's so much you can learn about how to unravel a story, specifically from video games. Just different ways you can communicate things and make meaning and whatnot. So that's what I want to talk about. And like I said before, because I'm going to grad school for literacy studies, I've been learning about the teaching side of reading and writing. A lot of what we talk about is how you cannot really be a good writer unless you are a reader. You learn so much and you can pick up so many things from different books. So that's really what I want to focus on, how you can take what you learn in one book or what one author does and you can apply it to your own writing. You learn writing by reading and you get better at reading the more you write. So it all goes hand in hand. When did you start writing? So I've been a storyteller ever since I was a little kid. Oh my god, I had this like toy. My favorite toy was just a bunch of like straws I taped together to so I could like make different shapes and like tell different stories. So I've been a storyteller ever since I was a little kid. So once I learned how to write, it was just kind of a way to record the stories that were already going on in my head. My Barbie dolls and my Bratz dolls. Yes, I was a child of the 2000s. Always had a really, really elaborate backstories and high tension conflicts, which is really weird when you're playing with other kids who are like, I think these two are just in love. And I'm like, no, but they can't be together. But I guess there were high stakes for like a child. I've been trying to write a book ever since, I think the first time I tried was when I was in the 6th grade and all throughout high school. I took a break when I was in college and only really wrote during the summer when I had time. I was a music major, so my schedule was bananas and I had a lot of little classes that I had to take, and I didn't really have time to spend on writing that wasn't, you know, school related when I was in college. So then after I graduated, I was able to really get back into writing. So I guess my whole life I've been writing. Next question, what is the first story you ever wrote? So like I was saying, I wrote a lot of stories when I was a kid and I don't remember most of them. One, because there were so many, and two, they weren't very involved. I think most of them were like plot rip-offs of whatever book I was reading at the time. I remember when I was in 6th grade, I wrote like 2 short stories for my teacher, and the first one, it was like that movie Twitches from Disney Channel, OMG throwback. And it was about like it was like 4 best friends and they all had magic powers, and they were like, the powers are based on like ancient cats or something. I don't know where I got this stuff from. And I remember I was so excited to write the short story for my teacher because I wanted to make it a book. So I was just gonna like write the short story, like it was the first chapter of the book or something, and I got a C. It was the first time I had ever gotten such a low grade, and I was furious. That was at the beginning of the year, so this was like September, October. Then around Christmas time, the same teacher asked us to write a holiday story, and I remember I really wanted to get an A. This woman had wounded my pride. I was getting an A. So I wrote a really cheesy short story. I think it was like, family from the city goes out to the country for Christmas and and they're rich, and then they meet a poor family and they learn the meaning of Christmas. It was honestly, I think it was worse than a Hallmark movie type of cheesy story. I was about 10 or 12 at the time, and when I wrote that story, I felt like a sellout. It was so predictable, and my characters were all stock characters or like cliches, and it made me so mad. But I knew this teacher would give me an A for writing it, and she did. So I won, but I sold my soul. So I don't know if you can tell, but this really impacted me as a child. I think the first truly original story, however, that I wrote was in high school. It was like a YA romance about a girl who like travels around Europe, and it's like the summer before she goes to college, and oh my gosh, that's like what I wanted to do the summer before I went off to college. She met this cute musician at a pub, and he may or may not have been based off of Ed Sheeran at the time. Anyway, so they meet and they fall in love, and it's like this whirlwind, like what you want as a high school teenager to happen when you run off to Europe. I was so excited about that book because I thought I would be able to publish it before I went off to school. But then tragedy struck, and the thumb drive that I had saved the story on broke. It was like on my computer, it was plugged in, and my computer fell over. And the only reason why my computer didn't break was because of this thumb drive. So I was thankful. But also, the thumb drive got bent. And I lost, not everything, but a lot of the like most recent stuff I had worked on. And it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Authors who inspire you. What authors have inspired your writing the most? So this is a really hard question because I have authors that I love to read. And then I have authors who really inspire me as a writer. And I also like read a lot of books, and I found that there's, like I was saying before, there's a lot of things you can learn from reading, especially like reading really good books. As far as general inspiration goes, I'd say Gail Carson Levine, the author of Ella Enchanted. She also is the author of Fairest. So like how Ella Enchanted is loosely based off of Cinderella, Fairest is loosely based off of Snow White. So this was one of my favorite, she was my favorite author when I was a kid. Also Tamara Pierce, she's one of the leaders in YA fantasy. She's also one of my favorites. I love the Circle of Magic series, even though ironically it's like more kid lit, but I discovered it when I was like more of an adult. And it kind of, both these books kind of remind me of Harry Potter in a way, but with more diversity. And Tommy Ayudemi, I think that's how you pronounce her name, the author of Children of Blood and Bone, is another author in this vein. And one thing I really love is how all these authors, they don't write stories that are made like just for children or stories that are made just for teenagers. They write novels that just happen to have a really young set of protagonists. And that's one thing that I really like. Just so good. They don't downplay the plot or like try to make all the adults really stupid, like some children's books or TV shows do. And the characters all have their own little quirks, and they just seem so real. Alexa Dunn is another one of my favorites as well. I read Brightly Burning on Audible last year, shortly after I discovered Alexa Dunn's Authortube channel. And I have to say, she actually practices what she preaches, which is just, it means a lot to me because that's something that I really look for. And I can 100% say that Alexa Dunn does that, so I'll link to her channel below. I love Brightly Burning, and I love that she did a retelling of Jane Eyre because that's one of my favorite books of all time. She also follows just all of the advice on her Authortube channel. Do you schedule your writing sessions or simply get to writing when you find the time? So yes and no. I try to schedule my writing sessions, but because I have a day job that doesn't always work out, and you know, like life also happens, and so sometimes the specific time don't always line up for me, so I try to schedule it. I have like a Google Calendar, and I made the event and everything for writing time, but it doesn't always happen at that specific time. One of the things that you learn about when you try to achieve goals is that it's a lot easier if you set a looser framework for yourself and a measurable amount of time. So if you want to start going to the gym, instead of saying I'm going to the gym Monday, Wednesday, Friday because life happens, you would say I want to go to the gym 3 times a week. So that's kind of what my approach to scheduling writing time is I just try to take 30 minutes a day and just focus on at least one project or something related to that project. So it may not be specifically like sitting down and typing on the keyboard and writing that way. It could also just be me doing research on publishers or magazines that are looking for submissions and that sort, or writing a cover letter or a query letter or something like that. So I try to just make sure that I always have the gears turning and the project doesn't really leave my mind. It always just kind of stays with me. How/where do you write? Do you type on a computer, typewriter, write everything out by hand or use a blend of those, and where do you write in general? So I mainly use my laptop, and I like to work at my desk when I'm writing. I set up the space. This is kind of the space that I use. I have a Murphy desk. It helps me make sure that I keep everything clean because then I have to fold it up. I usually use my laptop. I don't really like writing out by hand. I think it's because I'm a lefty, so then the ink gets all over my hand. And I like to be able to go back and like reorganize things. I'm a very visual person. I don't like to write things out by hand because then if I want to move it around, I have to rewrite it, and it just, to me, it just makes all this extra work. Sometimes I use my phone. If I can't get to the computer, I'll use the Google Keep like note-taking thing. I set up my space to have a lot of books and writing themed things, so it's where when I sit down to it, it's where I most feel like a writer, but inspiration can come from anywhere. I also recently got into using the speech-to-text app for when I'm having trouble literally writing something out and I need to talk it through, so that way I can like just have the words on the page, like they're written down, and then I can just go back and edit later. What are you most looking forward to now that you're a part of Authortube? I'm looking forward to having a community of writers. A lot of my friends are really supportive, and so is my family, but most of them aren't necessarily writers or working on like a novel or anything like that. So I'm just looking forward to having a community of writers that I can get advice from and whatnot. I think it would be really good for to make these videos, because then I have something literally holding me accountable. If I'm making videos about writing, then it gets me in the mindset of writing and reading, and then that will make me just keep working. Thank you. Please like and subscribe to my channel. I will post new videos 1 to 2 times a week, and happy writing!